So a reflection I frequently hear in this line of work is, Lewis, we just can't get these boys to engage. They're not engaging. They're not interested. They do not want to have conversations about masculinity. They do not want to engage in the uh, process that's needed to take accountability, to reflect on their actions. We're really struggling with engagement. I want to spend some time, most likely over a few episodes, really digging into the soil of the engagement conundrum. Because for me, as I've mentioned, this is something that I hear and often see when people ask me to come into schools. It's often one of the opening lines or one of the opening sort of requests when it comes to my visits, the projects that I produce or the deliveries that I facilitate in the context of education specifically. We can't get these boys to engage, and we think you're the person, or we will want you to be the person to try and help engage because we haven't been able to do it. We haven't been able to get them to engage. We're struggling with engagement. And the reason I'm doing this over a few episodes is because otherwise we'll be here till next week. I think there's a range of different routes and ways that we can take this engagement conundrum. But I want to start slow, and I want to start intentional, and I want to start with you. I want to start with you as educators. I want to start with you as the human beings and the humans doing in this episode. That's what I'm really interested in exploring and digging in the soil to kind of really reflect on some of those ideas that we may be holding, but most importantly, and maybe most challenging in this context, the assumptions that might be making, that we might actually be actively enforcing, that might be getting in the way of some of the work that's happening. I want to be really clear before I jump any further, by the way. This isn't a roast of you and the work that you're doing or not doing. This is not what I'm about, as you know, or if you have been following me for the last couple of years, you've been listening to the episodes recently. It's not my style. I don't come with the shame stick. I don't come with the tautology. I come with a desire to calibrate, and definitely not with the desire to condemn in this space and within this context. But I do think when it comes to conversations about engagement, specifically how to get boys to engage, the recipe for engagement, we first got to start way before any tactic, any style, any approach, and actually ask ourselves the question, first and foremost, is it an engagement problem? Is it an engagement problem? Can you be sure of that? Are you sure that what you're dealing with is an engagement problem, or is it a dysregulation issue? There's a difference. Dysregulation can absolutely impact engagement, but how do you know that what you're dealing with is an engagement conundrum? Have you tried multiple ways of engaging? Have you tried multiple styles of delivery? Have you asked the young people that you're working with what they would like to discuss in this space? Have you thought about your own assumptions and ideas leading into any conversation or intervention that you might be running or uh, thinking about running? Have you started sifting through some of that soil? Because the engagement conundrum is often a response to, we tried something, or we've tried a couple of things, or perhaps we've tried a few things and they're not working. They're not really materializing or creating the response or the results that we were expecting. Therefore, we're having an issue with engagement. We've tried a few things, the response isn't what we're expecting, and actually we don't know what to do. My question is, before we jump any further into how to build engagement or how to really maximize engagement in this context, we first have to think about what's your approach and lens leading into the work itself. What do you want out of this as educators? And is what you want as educators in line with or in collaboration with the young people that you're looking to serve? Because often we approach this engagement issue that we often frame and label it as, well, it's just, we need to do it this way. We need to reach young people where they're at. We need to meet and, explore young people where they're at. We need to meet them where they're at. Those types of variations we see and hear all the time. But meeting young people where they're at is not necessarily an effective strategy if you've got preconceived notions of what those young people need. If you're going in saying, this manosphere stuff, That's what they want to talk about. This online TikTok stuff, that's what it is. This, pornography and the rise of pornography and the TikTok to OnlyFans pipeline, that's what we need to talk about. We need to talk about relationships. They need to talk about X, Y, and Z, insert topic here. If you're going in with an assumption of this is what boys, young men want to talk about, and I'll meet them there where they're at, how do you know that's where they're at? And I've said this in previous episodes, specifically episodes that speak to intersectionality. But the best way to know what a young person or young men or masculinities that you want to engage with, or what you want to interact with, and who you want to sort of build relational equity with in the context of the work that you're doing, the best way to do that is to ask them. The best way to do that is to actually go in, not with this idea of we know what you want. We know what you want in this space. We're going to deliver it because we're familiar with what's happening online. We see it. You want to talk about the manosphere, right? That's what you're going to talk about. You want to talk about these influencers, right? That's what you're going to talk about, right? You want to talk about insert topic here. We see it. We're going to talk about it. That's what you want to talk about, right? But there's something really empowering about meeting, conversing, collaborating with young people, young masculinities, in a way that says, instead of this is what we're going to cover, because instead of doing that, going in with, we've got this idea of what we want to do. We're thinking about talking about this or bringing this into discussion. If we were to have conversations around masculinity, we're thinking about going this way. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Is that speaking to what it is that what you want to talk about? Is that what's happening and showing up for you in your worlds right now? Simple questions, collaborative questions, not instructive methodologies. You'll do it this way. This is it. Not recipes. We're going to do this and this, and that's why, because I say so. Because when we talk about meeting young people where they're at or where they are, depending on how you use it and where you're from and how you want to sort of communicate it, when it comes to that process, you don't start that process by defining the parameters through which that engagement takes place. You don't go, I'm going to meet you where you're at as long as you follow the instruction that I'm laying in front of you. I'll meet you where you're at as long as you keep the conversation in places and spaces where I think we need to go. Meeting young men or young people where they're at is collaborative. What are we missing? How are we approaching this in a way that isn't giving you that space to engage? And to do that, you've got to take stock of your own assumptions. What are you assuming about the young people that you're working with, specifically the young men and masculinity? What are you assuming about their world that you might need to fact or sense check? And there's going to be some of you listening into this right now, by the way, just out of prior experience, training and working with educators and having conversations with educators that are going to hear me say, sense check with young people, check in with young people, take your workings out to young people and go, that feels really uncomfortable for me. That's not how I'm used to working, Lewis. That's not the style that I'm used to. Or there's something about that when I think about the young people that I work with and how in my ideas and in my world, how problematic and disengaged they can be, that I don't know if that's going to work. Is it that it's not going to work, or is it? And I'm in a new era right now from a previous episode. I'm bringing some of this, I call it, stingology. I put ologies on things all the time, but a stingology that I bring into sessions that I have with educators and with people that are interested in this space. This might sting, just giving you the heads up before we jump into that space, right? But perhaps one of the reasons why this isn't working or that the engagement isn't working is because you, in your own ways, in your own frameworks, in your own approach, are assuming starting points and building the expectations off of where you think this work needs to go, as opposed to what your young people, in this case, young men, are seeking. If it's not that way in the parameters that I feel comfortable discussing or talking about, or the unpredictability for me is a little bit dysregulated, and therefore I don't know what's going to come out, given those young people the reins of the session might end up going into some silly spaces that I don't think we're going to be, able to facilitate. Those are all assumptions. Those are all projections, granted, based on previous interactions and previous conversations, perhaps in spaces. But here's one thing that I've learned over the years working with young people. recording this podcast right now after visiting a educational space where the pre-brief was, hey, by the way, sometimes these boys can be particularly problematic. Just giving you the heads up, Lewis. Just giving you the heads up. That's what to expect. Can you guess how that session went? Just based off of what I've said. Do you think they were problematic and absolutely, disrespectful and weren't engaged whatsoever? No, they weren't. They're some of the most engaged. They're probably one of the most engaged groups I've had over the last 4 or 5 weeks. Because my assumption of them isn't what was given to me previously. I'm meeting young people where they're at, and where I'm meeting them at is, so what's going on for you right now? Talk to me about it. I'm not here to create this impression that I know what's going on and you don't, and there's this weird power dynamic and hierarchy of I'm the expert and you're not. Let's talk about this together. What am I assuming, or what's being assumed about you that's impacting and influencing you, and how can we work around that? As a result of that, those previous assumptions of, oh, it's going to be silly, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. When you meet the space with the intentionality, seriousness, and compassion that's needed, you get even the most silly, derailing, disengaged, disruptive, disrespectful boys on board. Because engagement isn't just about what you say and how you say it and what methods you use and what methods you don't use. There's a safety that needs to be built way before the conversation takes place. And you might be a safe company in other aspects of the school context. They might come to you for advice. They might come to you for mentorship in the subjects that you teach or the specific work that you do. But when it comes to masculinities, that's something you have to build from the ground up, even if you are somebody that is seen as safe company in the context of these young people, because it's a new space. It's uncharted territory. It's a new opportunity to provide a new aspect of openness and vulnerability that perhaps hasn't been experienced or considered or even thought of before. Just because you're good with these young people in this space doesn't mean that assumption carries over into the work you're doing. That needs to take some intentional groundwork immediately in terms of the delivery. We need to start from the assumption that we don't know what's happening in this relation to this context, and ideas and thoughts that I might have are a guiding mechanism, not a concrete flag in the sand. But to do that, we've got to think about our own assumptions. What am I assuming in this space as an educator that might be creating boundaries or creating barriers rather in the context of this conversation? What am I assuming that might actually result in disengagement? Am I speaking to, how can I sense check that? I heard something recently, which is one of the most beautiful summaries of everything that I've tried to sort of formulate so far off the top of my head in this stream of consciousness. Because you know how we roll in here. It's never planned in the sense of, hey, I've got this and I'm going to cover this itinerary. This is what I feel I needed to bring into the space today. And one of the real statements that I've been sitting with and pondering and reflecting on over the past couple of weeks at time of recording is this: arrogance assumes, curiosity questions. I'm not calling you arrogant, by the way. I'm not saying that you're stepping in with a sense of haughtiness, a sense of, I know what's going on, a sense of clarity and conviction that comes across as arrogance. But assumptions, template projections, this idea of I know what's happening and I know what these boys need and I know what is most effective in this space because I've worked with them in this context. That assumption that you know what's going on is, this is the synology comes in, it is a form of arrogance, insofar as you haven't checked with them. You haven't seen if what your hunch is correct. You haven't allowed those assumptions to be challenged, amended, or critiqued. And it's precisely this dynamic that enables the potency of masculinity work to occur in a way that is not only fruitful, but transformative in the long run. If you think you've got this figured out and you know what needs to be done based off of this data here, this report here, this context here, and you're going into spaces with that downloaded template sort of idea of what we need to talk about, and your response to that, I don't know why these guys aren't engaging. Have you checked? Have you checked with them? Have you checked in with them? And have you checked your assumptions on what is needed? Because even as a man myself, I am not 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. That age range alone has so much in it that in my expert lens, I might go, well, I can assume it's here. But I never build sessions off of assumptions. I build sessions based off of curiosity. So I'm thinking I want to go here. Am I right in that sense? If not, what's showing up for you right now that you want to bring into this space? It requires a different skill set. It's not about teaching. It's not about educating. This is what this means and this is how this means. Young people want to be talked with, not just talked at. And the reason we're finding engagement issues, in my opinion, in topic areas around masculinities at this point in time is because we are using the talking at template in contexts, in communities, in learning spaces where we need to be using talking with. It requires a different approach. It requires curiosity, collaboration, instead of assumption and condemnation. I assume you probably follow this influencer, right? That's who you follow, don't you? That's what you do. That's what you're about. I know because I know I know people your age. I see it online. That might not be what you intend, but at times that is how it is received by young people. Do you want to know how I know? Yes. We talk about it. I ask them, what is something that gets in the way of you being able to do this with some of the teachers that you work with? Honestly, Lewis, they'll say, in some way, shape, or form, they don't talk to us like you do. I want you to think about that. And this is not me, to be super clear. Please hear my heart on this one. This is not about me making an episode to make you feel crappy about what you're doing and what you're not doing. But this is something that I hear in some way, shape, or form in a range of different sessions, whether it is assembly deliveries, whether it is workshop deliveries, whether it's small group facilitation, dialogue centered conversations and reflections. There is a version of that. We don't feel like we're necessarily given that space to reflect, to talk, to get things wrong. You've asked us what we think is necessary and useful. Otherwise, sometimes it just feels like this is what we need to do. Which is why when I come into spaces and they think, oh, this is a masculinity educator, they immediately go on the defense because their template, their previous interactions might have been something along the lines of, why'd you do that? It's disgusting. That's disgraceful. Cut it out. And whilst we must challenge harmful behaviors, whilst we must hold young men and masculinities to higher standards when we're considering the things that we've normalized, the things that we encourage, what we must also do is create the space to talk with them, not just at them. Because the reason, again, in my opinion, some of these influencers have the hold that they do on some of these young men is because they attune to their experiences in a way that maybe some of us don't. They might start with, I know, well, you probably feel that way. It feels this way for you, right? And even if it is exploitative, even if it comes with an agenda to buy this project and buy this product and get involved in this Telegram space, they are addressing and naming feelings and creating that representation, even if it's faux, even if it's smoke and mirror tactics. Those young people feel like they're being understood. The way to do that in real time is to talk with, not at. To sit in the discomfort of what might be shared, but to ultimately dig in the soil of that. Because when young people feel like they're being heard consistently and not performatively, I'm not going to hear you out and then I'm going to say what I think, Ryan. You might not like what I say, but you're going to hear me out on this one. Instead, let's explore it. Help me to understand. I feel like I'm getting it from this perspective from you. It's this way. Can you expand on that a little bit more? Because I'm really trying to understand where you're coming from. That lays the modeling that's necessary for them to go through that journey for themselves, but also to do that with each other. You can't replicate what you haven't seen. And for me in this context right now, engagement, we have to interrogate our own assumptions. What are we assuming about the young people that we're working with? What are we assuming about their proximity to the conversations? What are we assuming about the way in which they're going to, engage with this conversation? How have we sense checked that? Because arrogance assumes, curiosity consistently, I'm going to add consistently in there, curiosity consistently questions. So before we get into the how-tos and what works best, let's start at the base. What are we assuming? What are we taking for granted in this conversation? That a simple sense check, a simple check-in conversation before anything is designed and delivered might actually influence or impact and collaborate with the people that you're looking to serve. And I'm saying serve intentionally here. Something about, I've noticed and observed is that there is a power dynamic, generally speaking, that we struggle to let go of because in some way in our own soil, talking to a young person about what they need and what they want feels like the power is out of it. You're absolutely right. This isn't about you, respectfully. This isn't about you and your position and what you hold. You're there in the context of the work that we do as people who work in education, as people who work in the spaces that we work within. We're there to serve. We're there to serve compassionately, curiously, intentionally. And sometimes that means saying, I'm not entirely sure what you need, but I know you might have a better idea of what that is. Let's work together. Let's work together. Let's teach each other. You want to build communities, you want to build cultures of openness and reflectiveness, lead first. Go first. Leadership isn't just about instructions. It's about what you model consistently, authentically, or congruently in the work that you do. So I want to park that there for this week. I know I might have brought in more stingology than usual, but for me, I'm in a position, as I mentioned within the last episode that I recorded. I've been doing a lot of reflecting. I spent a lot more time offline and thinking about what I want to do in these spaces that I'm a part of. And one of the things that has become abundantly clear for me in my own personal space and my own, reflectiveness and my own journey is that this is the sort of conversations that we often need to have, but we don't have them. So I truly hope and I pray that this conversation has landed in the way that I intended it to. It's not about me coming and saying, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. These are the same questions I had to ask myself as somebody getting into the space and working with young people. I talk about this in my book, in the chapter in my book. There was an assumption I made about what young people wanted. I think I've spoken about it on here as well. There was an assumption I made about what young people wanted. And they took me to the side and they were like, Lewis, I'm going to be honest with you, don't really like that. It doesn't resonate for us. But if I led with my assumptions, I would be delivering a session that wasn't speaking to the realities of the young people that I am serving in the spaces. I talk about this and to this from experience. And I don't want you to think that this is me exerting a sense of I'm superior and I've got it and I've got it figured out. No, not whatsoever. This is for me an opportunity to talk about the things that I learned and the things that I often see missed in the discourse around engagement. But this is, like I say, one of many, because as you probably tell, it's a slightly longer episode than usual. But I am going to part the episode here. I'm going to come back and revisit this. I'm going to talk about this some more. But I genuinely hope you find this episode useful. I hope there are some things you need to think about and reflect on. And if there are other episodes in this sort of format or in this dynamic that you want to explore some more, let me know. I'm more than happy to cover them and give some of my thoughts and my perspectives on them, because this is always a stream of consciousness that's just kind of arriving as it lands, not edited. It's just what it is. It's just showing up as it is in the space right now. So I hope you find this episode useful. Big blessings to you. Thank you so much for tuning in and rocking with the podcast. And I hope to see you in a future episode very, very soon. Bye-bye.